Hi booktube, this is Kelly. Thank you so much for watching my channel, Books I'm Not Reading, and welcome to a shaketember video. I'm going to be reviewing The Year of Lear, Shakespeare in 1606 by James Shapiro. This was published in 2015, and I have made several attempts at reviewing this video. And it comes across like a book report and not a book review. So I'm just going to share some of the things I found, a few things that I found fascinating in this book. If you've read it or are reading it and you want to share what you have found fascinating in this book, or anything about the three plays that we're going to be talking about, King Lear, Macbeth, and Antony and Cleopatra, please feel free to share that as well in the comment section down below. As always, if you don't feel comfortable leaving a comment, you can leave an emoji or you can give this video a thumbs up. Before I get into the book though, I want to say that this video would not be possible without the support of my booktube community, who has helped me in a fundraising goal that I have on my Ko-fi page to try to sort of buy myself some time. So in August, I was able to take 2 extra days off of work using money that I've raised from my Ko-fi campaign. I hope to take another 3 days off before the year is over, to spend more time to analyze things or to challenge myself in terms of what the quality of my videos are. So anyway, so thank you so much to all of those people, and if you're interested in participating and being part of my campaign, again, you can find the link down below. But let's talk about The Year of Lear. So before we get to 1606, we have to back up to 1603, which is when King James I becomes the King of England. He's the son of Mary, Queen of Scots. He's married, he has 3 children. So it's very natural that the whole dialogue in England suddenly changes. We no longer have a queen who's unmarried, who's childless. So the things that people are worried about are going to change slightly. And I think what Shapiro is really trying to say is, you know, these are the things that were happening in England, that changed the discourse and set Shakespeare on a slightly different path. Now, initially I decided to do a review of this book because King Lear and Macbeth are both plays that our Shaketember hosts are discussing. So I'm one of the hosts. I'm going to be discussing Macbeth later this month. And Nicole at A Day of Small Things is going to be discussing King Lear. But I realized in the what's known as the Jacobean era, I hope I'm saying that right, there's 2 other plays, Cymbeline, which is also being discussed by Nicole, and The Tempest, which is being discussed by my husband Jason at All Blues Chapter and Verse. We're the 3 hosts of Shaketember, our month-long celebration of all things Shakespeare. And so yeah, 4 of the 6 plays that we're going to be talking about in September are Jacobean plays. And so I think it's important to recognize when we think Shakespeare wrote a certain play and what is happening, what's going on in the world around him that is influencing him. So I really I learned so much. I think what I struggled with the book, I gave the book 4 stars, but it's really a reflection on me and not on James Shapiro, because I have realized I just don't read history. I don't know why, and it's certainly something I'm gonna have to kind of reevaluate, but the history part of this was so difficult. But we know so much more, obviously, about King James I, who was also King James VI of Scotland. We know so much more about his life than we do about Shakespeare's. And so anytime we say something about Shakespeare. It is a bit of speculation, but again, in 1606, I think Shapiro argues this as well, like, I think Shakespeare started writing King Lear in 1605. And then after that, he writes Macbeth and then Antony and Cleopatra. So I learned a ton about James the First. Entire reign, he was really trying to unite, to make the United Kingdom, if you will. He was trying to bring together, I think Ireland was already considered part of England, but he wanted Scotland, of course, his native country, to be included as well. And so he just battled and battled and battled, and it did not happen in his lifetime, the forming of the United Kingdom. But so it was a huge talking point, and it gave King James's subjects this kind of identity crisis about what does it mean to be British? What does it mean to be Scottish? What are the things that we share? What are our differences? And Shakespeare takes that dialogue of bringing a kingdom together to talking about dividing a kingdom apart. So that is where we get King Lear. And Shakespeare, of course, the greatest thief and plagiarist of all time, stole an earlier version of King Lear. It was Leir, and stripped it down, takes what's good and rewrites it. And it's about a king who asks his three daughters who loves him the most, or how much do they love him. And the one who truly loves him is willing to not say anything, because she feels like she's shown him how much she loves him, Cordelia. But I just thought it was a really fascinating idea when the country is talking about uniting, and Shakespeare shows us what it would be like if a country dissolved, if it broke apart. And his version is apocalyptic, if you will. And one of the things I found hilarious about this whole taking this old King Lear and making it his own, the old King Lear had a happy ending. And people really struggled with how bleak Shakespeare's ending was for the play. And people have been tinkering it probably since 1606, because it was just so dark and depressing. There's actually a version of King Lear that existed from 1681 to 1838. I don't know what happened in 1838 that made people suddenly decide to look back at what was an earlier version of King Lear, but it had a happy ending. And that was not Shakespeare's vision at all. But so people have been messing about. They can't handle how bleak King Lear is. The next play after Shakespeare finishes writing King Lear, he starts writing Macbeth. And one of the things, again, I learned a lot about the gunpowder plot, which takes place in 1605, November 5th, 1605. So if you ever hear a British booktuber talking about bonfire night, that's what they're referring to. But I mean, I think now, post 9/11, we can all recognize how we would feel if we discovered there was a bunch of gunpowder or bombs, I guess, in today's situation, like underneath a government building. We would all be really rattled by it, and we'd be rattled by it for a long time. It was a group of Catholic gentry, is how Shapiro describes them, who planned to essentially blow up Parliament, kill the king, all political leadership, and it would have killed many, many other just ordinary citizens of London. So Guy Fawkes was the person that they discovered under there, but there were a whole slew of people. Shapiro throws a lot of names at the reader in this of who was involved, who was accused, all that kind of stuff. So clear, even though it happens in 1605, it's not something people just forget. Macbeth is about a Scottish king, and we have a Scottish king on the throne. So he has to be careful. He has to be careful about how he handles things. But I think he used Holinshed's Chronicles as his source material for Macbeth. Although, and Shakespeare used that for all of his history plays. Macbeth is considered a tragedy, not a history, I don't think. But nonetheless, I think part of why he is able to do what he does in Macbeth is because Fleance, who is an ancestor to James I, is the one who gets away, and who will eventually become King of Scotland. Shakespeare's never afraid to play fast and loose with history in when he's writing about real people. But I think the real question of Macbeth is how, going back to the gunpowder plot, is how could anyone plan such a violent crime? How could anyone plan something so evil? And he does not give any easy answers in Macbeth. The other thing I wanted to say about Macbeth is there's this whole, kind of aura about Macbeth that it's, if you're in a theater and you're doing a production of Macbeth, you can't actually say Macbeth. You have to say the Scottish play. And actually, it's all a great myth. It goes back no further than the late 19th century. Someone reviewed a production of Macbeth and said they made up a story that the person who was maybe initially or at some point was supposed to play Lady Macbeth gets sick right before the performance is supposed to begin, and so Shakespeare plays Lady Macbeth, and it's totally false. It's totally false, but nonetheless, there's always that aura about Macbeth being kind of a cursed play, is something. Yeah, I just find it very interesting. But anyway, we're going to talk, like I said, more about Macbeth at the end of the month. And then the third play Shakespeare writes in 1606 is Antony and Cleopatra, which we read for Shaketember last year, which was great fun. Although, again, we picked 3 tragedies last year. The body count was very high. And thinking of these 3 plays, yes, it's pretty bad. So one of the reasons why they think Shakespeare was already thinking about writing Antony and Cleopatra while he's wrapping up Macbeth is because there are quotes in Macbeth from Plutarch's Lives, which is the inspiration for Antony and Cleopatra, the life of Antony. And Macbeth makes reference to Antony at one point, and Shapiro writes, "What is a medieval Scot doing paraphrasing Plutarch and identifying with Antony?" So I think that's a really an interesting question, to think that Shakespeare's mind was spinning already ahead. Part of the reason why it was spinning ahead is because there was a new law that was put into place that said that any actor who jestingly or profanely invoked the name of God, Christ, the Holy Ghost, or the Trinity would be fined £10, which was equivalent to half a year's wages. And so it impacted not only what Shakespeare could write going forward, but also all the things that he had already written. So they had to go back. One of the expressions you'll see a lot in Shakespeare is zounds, which was initially God's wounds. And so they had to change a lot of stuff. There was a Christ's blood was another word, an expression that was used, and now it's just blood. So anytime you see those things, that's why they were changed, was so that they would not, the actor, the writer didn't have to be worried that the government was going to come after them. And so even though he's writing the Scottish play, he's already thinking, okay, what can I do next to really avoid having to have somebody go, having to go back later and rewrite this play. So he thinks back on to Julius Caesar, which he wrote in 1599, and decides to return to that world with Antony and Cleopatra. And so because it's under the Roman Empire, because of the time that Antony and Cleopatra is set, he doesn't have to worry about any references to the Trinity, to Christ. There is a little reference to Herod, I think, in Antony and Cleopatra and the Jews. So, but it's, it's far off. These events are taking place somewhere else. And I did not realize how kind of vilified, in Shakespeare's day, Antony and Cleopatra were. And so it was a very, steep hill that Shakespeare had to climb to make them empathetic characters. I think people thought that people had some empathy for Cleopatra in the fact that she killed herself rather than become a Roman slave that's on display. And I think people maybe admired her courage for that. The other thing that I found really fascinating about this book was the influence that the plague had on Shakespeare. Especially in 1606, the plague is very, very bad, and they have a certain number of, they can only have a certain number of deaths by plague per week, and that's the threshold that determines whether the theaters can be open or not. So if it goes, it's not a very high number, it's like 30 or 40 people. And then after that, if it goes up, the theaters are closed. And at one point, I think 3,000 people a week were dying of the plague. So because King James appoints Shakespeare and his fellow players to be the king's men, they are allowed to tour, they're allowed to perform at court, and so the year is not wasted for them because the theaters are closed almost the entire year. It's very spotty when the Globe is actually open in 1606. But it also gave Shakespeare the time to write. He didn't have to be an actor at that point. He's 42. Playwrights of Shakespeare's day made very, very few references to the plague. Nobody writes a play about the plague because it's so close, because it impacts everyone's life. I could go on and on. I would definitely recommend it. And again, that 4-star rating has to do with my ability to read history rather than Shapiro's ability to write it. I found the stuff about Shakespeare just absolutely fascinating, but the history I got kind of bogged down in. There were, like I said, there were a lot of names to try to soak in and digest. But anyway, I would love to know what you think about this book or what you think about any of those plays in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to your comments. Booktube, remember to be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and I'll be back soon with another video.